Hello citizens, and welcome back to the next episode of my Star Citizen Q&A, where I answer your burning questions about the game and everything else. As always, here's a shout out to my patrons and channel members for their support of the channel and everything else I do. And let's dive right in. We are going to start things off with a lengthy but excellent question from PaceyXK, who's asking, my question is about the Raft changes. They upgraded the cargo grid. That sounds nice on paper, but I feel like they've changed the whole concept of the ship. Instead of improving it, it feels more like a downgrade. Originally, the Raft had a unique approach to cargo handling, but now it seems just like another upside-down cargo ship. To quote CIG, maximize payloads and minimize hassle with remote loading and unloading from the comfort of the cockpit, end quote. Why not make the entire cargo grid drop down and release the cargo, rather than changing the ship's identity? So my question is, if ships like the Raft can have their core functionality and concept changed so drastically, what does that mean for future ships like the Endeavour? How much can we expect ships to change? And is this level of rework really okay? First, let's put this into context for newer players or those who haven't registered the Raft changes. The Argo Raft was released in anticipation of the big cargo refactor. The main feature of the ship was that it had 3 lifts that could each attach a 32 SCU container. The idea was that you can quickly load and unload cargo by just dropping it and picking it up. However, while the Raft was supposed to release with the cargo refactor, it actually ended up releasing about 2 years before it, since cargo refactor was delayed and reworked into what we have now. And the drop and pickup functionality for the Raft never materialized. And therein lies the problem. The Raft was made for a different style of cargo handling than what we ended up getting. It's difficult to say what was the original design, but what we have right now requires the player to either load the boxes manually or store the ship and let it happen behind the scenes automatically. This has made the lifts that were originally present on the Raft obsolete, and this created a bit of a problem. The Raft, being a medium ship, only had 96 SCU of cargo space, which was actually very low for a dedicated hauler of its size. So CIG decided to replace the 3 lifts with a single unified cargo grid, which increased the cargo capacity of the Raft to 192 SCU, which gave it a new unique property, which is that it can carry way more cargo than ships of a similar size. And with how the cargo grid is positioned, it's still very easy to load and unload. And making it possible to drop the whole grid wouldn't work either, since there is no way to position the ship over the cargo elevator. And that brings us back to your question. Is this level of rework okay, and what can we expect to happen with yet unreleased ships? In my opinion, if gameplay design decisions make an existing ship obsolete, then it's okay for CIG to rework the ship drastically, as long as it stays within the same category. And so far, all ship reworks and gold standard passes have stayed true to this. Now, what does this mean for yet unreleased concepts? I think we can definitely expect some changes in stats for all of them, and maybe even some adjustment of functionality, especially if the underlying gameplay is redesigned. Look at the Pioneer, for example. The intended design for base building changed from a factory-style construction to drone construction, which made the Pioneer obsolete. So it was reworked to use drones and provide mobile base functionality. It's still a construction ship, but since it's no longer the intended goal to assemble the buildings inside of it, removing its main quirk, it was given extra storage, a fabricator, and the ability to extract resources from deep deposits. And I would expect that the Endeavour gets a similar treatment once we determine what science gameplay looks like. Moving on to a great question from Olorin. Unlike nearly all other MMORPGs, Star Citizen doesn't have any real character power progression, level stats, skills, etc. Sure, you can increase your rep with a variety of orgs or factions, which when combined with money and resources may give you access to better gear and ships, but your character isn't really any stronger as the game goes on. Why do you think this is? And how do you think it will impact the way people play Star Citizen? So my understanding is that Star Citizen was concepted by Chris Roberts as a game where player skill is the deciding factor. So to be good at something, you have to be good at it. You can't just grind stats. And I think we're seeing the impacts already, especially in the racing and PvP communities. Players are spending countless of hours perfecting that singular skill so they can be the best. Now, there has been some talk of character skills that can evolve a few years ago, which I believe was scrapped already since it was very against the concept of Star Citizen, and we haven't really heard anything about it since the CitizenCon panel it was mentioned in. The more important question is, if there are no skills in Star Citizen, then what facilitates the progression for a player? Like you mentioned, reputation and funds are the main drivers, giving you access to better gear and restricted areas. And then there is the story that will be coming out with 1.0, which will give you some narrative progression. At the same time, this preserves the underlying concept of Star Citizen that you're still human. And much like in real life, there is only so much most of us can do, which promotes group play and forming orgs and alliances. And I actually like the idea. It does make things more difficult to balance, and I originally thought it would remove any kind of grind, but there's still reputation grind. But to be fair, building reputation in real life takes time and consistency too, so maybe reputation grind isn't that bad. Moving on to a mining question from Crew on the Net. Given the random nature of deposits, do you find it more worthwhile to track value per hour or value per trip when mining? I think this is a personal choice for most miners. Personally, I track value per trip, which to me seems like the more sensible thing to do, especially since mining requires extra time for refining and then for transporting the refined materials, which, if included, would really mess with the value per hour calculation. Though, admittedly, I don't track how much I earn per hour in general in Star Citizen. I look at whether I had a fun and productive session. And for me that can be anything. It can be several mining trips or some salvage or bounty missions, or just going to a place and taking some screenshots. The point of the game should be to have fun and not to chase credits. Unless, of course, that's what's fun for you. And moving on to our final question for today. What's your take on single-seat ship versus multi-crew balance in terms of combat? So we're ending things on a difficult question. Balance is one of the major concerns in Star Citizen, especially when it comes to combat. And given the skill-based and situational nature of Star Citizen, nothing should be impossible. For example, a fully crewed Hammerhead should have no problem with taking out a single attacking fighter. The Hammerhead has more and bigger guns and presumably longer engagement range. Though engagement range of turret weapons has long been a pain point of multi-crew ships. And even if the fighter manages to get within engagement range and land shots on the Hammerhead, perhaps because the fighter pilot is one of the best pilots in the game and the Hammerhead crew are very inexperienced, the damage should be minimal, and it should take the fighter very long time to take out the Hammerhead, either because it can't break the Hammerhead's shields, or because the fighter's weapons are ineffective against the Hammerhead's armor. This could be achieved with the planned armor mechanics, though I don't like the idea of armor as a capacitor that was presented. Armor should have different levels, and each level should make some weapons completely ineffective. To put it into a real-life example, shooting a pistol at a tank won't do much damage besides scratch the paint. You might get a lucky shot and damage the optics or other sensitive parts, but that once again comes down to skill and luck. At the same time, a dedicated group of fighters might be able to chip away at the Hammerhead's health or tie it down so it can't be used anywhere else in the battle. But you can also very easily change the balance. What if the Hammerhead is already damaged and has no shields? Or what if the crew are unable to return fire? And the balance further depends on the ships used. For example, an Eclipse or an Ares might have a better chance of damaging a larger multi-crew ship since that's what they're designed for. Balancing all of this is extremely complicated, especially since CIG can only do so indirectly through ship and weapon stats. This gets even more complicated when you try to balance combat ships versus non-combat ships. In a fight between a fighter and a Hammerhead, the initiative of the battle changes. The fighter, since it's faster and smaller, starts with the initiative, and starts its attack run, and then it has to retreat to recover shields and prepare for the next run, giving the initiative to the Hammerhead. The Hammerhead should be able to tank the damage while it's under attack, and then once the fighter retreats it gains the initiative, allowing it to either pursue the attacking fighter and keep the initiative, or reposition to gain an advantage for the next defense, losing the initiative. However, in a fight between a non-combat ship like a mole or a prospector or a hull A, and any combat ship, the initiative will always be with the combat ship. So you need to make non-combat ships either very tanky or very fast in order to give them a chance to gain initiative and escape. So as you can see, we can identify a lot of scenarios that could happen. For example, fighter against fighter, fighter against gunship, or gunship against the capital ship, or any mix of these scenarios or any mix and numbers of ships. And for each of these scenarios we can likely determine the most likely logical outcome, and then we can nudge the stats to achieve this most likely outcome. But ultimately we will see what happens when nav mode is removed. But I definitely understand the challenges of balancing the game, and I don't expect there to be a truly balanced. Some ships will simply be better at what they do than other ships. But as long as we get close enough, it's good enough for me. And with that being said, that's all for the community questions for today. The submissions for the next episode are up and linked in the description. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.